Hi, everyone, and welcome to 664 Treating Trauma. This video is for you, making this for you for a few reasons. One is I want to talk to you about how this course might affect you or impact you. Secondly, I want to do this in such a way that this will be an example for an assignment that you have toward the end of the course. So I have my friend, Dr. Beth Burrell here, and she's going to be my person, and you'll understand more about the assignment when you watch the video and read the instructions and all of that. So for now, just listen to what I have to say and just watch maybe how I do this, and then Beth and I may have a conversation at the end. Um, hi Beth, and welcome to the course. I'd like to talk to you about the Treating Trauma course because for some people, this course might even be a bit traumatizing. And people can be affected in different ways. And sometimes we take those ways and we lump them all up into the physical effects, the psychological effects, the emotional effects, and then the social effects of a trauma. And in this case, we know that some of the material in this course, what you will read, and videos that you'll watch, might actually result in some potential reactions that you might have because of the material. And that will happen because I don't know your history. And so it's possible that you've had some other traumas and that this material might remind you of those traumas. Or maybe you've been a pretty lucky person and you haven't really experienced any trauma. But when you start reading about some of the cases in the course and the stories in the textbooks, that might just have a pretty strong impact. And so I want to tell you a bit about the ways that you might be affected or impacted by this material, okay? So first I'd like to talk to you about some of the physical effects that you could experience. So sometimes when we experience a trauma or re-experience a trauma, because it might remind us of something, as I said, in the past, we could feel things that stay in our body as part of our memory. So we think about memory being in our head, but that's not always true. Sometimes we also feel it in our body. And when we feel it in our body might do different things. That might feel normal or might come unexpectedly. We don't really expect to be sitting and reading something and all of a sudden your heart starts beating fast or your stomach clenches up or you might find yourself breathing a little faster than you usually do or maybe even breaking out into a sweat. Those are all physical effects, potentially, of thinking about this as a trauma. You might also have, uh, after reading some of the cases or writing some of the work that you have to do, you might even have a little trouble sleeping now and then. You might wake up in the middle of the night, you could have bad dreams. You might have some change in your appetite. Sometimes people who have been traumatized or who re-experience trauma might find that they don't have much of an appetite or their appetite can increase. All of this has to do with and you'll learn a lot more about this as we go through the course, but our sympathetic and parasympathetic responses, which are something that our brain does to help protect us when we are in a situation that could be traumatic. Okay, so that's kind of a brief talk about things that you might experience physically. We'll learn a lot more about this in the course. Secondly, you might experience psychological effects. You might start thinking about things that you hadn't thought about for a while, and those things they might feel upsetting to you. I'll talk about emotional things in a minute. So you might start thinking, and you could have what we call sometimes running thoughts, where you start thinking and you don't quite know how to stop that thinking from happening. Or you might have some negative thoughts that you haven't had for a while, because that's part of what happens when our brain is affected. Our brain is set up to help protect us. And so it will say, danger, danger, but it won't exactly say it like that. It's going to do it a little differently by making our thoughts speed up, or maybe slow down, or become negative in some way. We might start thinking about things that we can't turn off, or we might not be able to turn on other kinds of thinking. So that memory is a big part of what we might experience if we re-experience a trauma, or we're introduced to something we hadn't really known about before. There might be some other things that you'll learn about too. So all of this is connected, and I'll come back to that in just a moment. You could then have a wide range of feelings. And those feelings could, some feelings or emotions might be stronger than others. Some of them might overwhelm other feelings. You might start feeling happy, and all of a sudden you feel scared, or you might start feeling angry, or you might begin to feel kind of irritable, or maybe it's something even more subtle, where you just feel uneasy. And initially, you might not connect that to the material that we're covering in the course, or some of the discussions that we have, or things that people talk about, or videos that you watch. But this would be a good opportunity to begin to notice things about yourself and see if that could be part of something that you are going to experience. I had to take a really quick break to try to turn off my email, but you'll learn more about how to do that with your own videos when you're making them. So back to feelings and emotions. So we could have a wide range of feelings, and some of them might be stronger than others. So angry, you might find yourself being suddenly angry and not knowing why. You can have other feelings, though, or they might be all mixed up, or you're not quite sure what your feeling is because your feelings are all balled up together. And that's not uncommon when somebody has experienced something that's traumatic or potentially traumatic. Okay? And then finally, our last category of how we kind of conceptualize what happens when we've experienced trauma falls into the social realm. And so socially, if while you're taking the course, now let's just step back for a second and say, in graduate school, it's really hard to have a social life to begin with, because you have so much to do. And you might be working full time, and you might have a family, and you might have any number of competing forces that make it really hard for you to be able to be social. Okay? So what can happen while you're in the course is now this just kind of increases that, or decreases really, your ability to connect with other people, or even feel like connecting to other people. You might want to, but find that you don't have time, or you don't feel comfortable. And so if we go back and we look at how you might be affected physically, that can then result in some of your thinking about what's going on, that then can inform some of your feelings, that might result in your actions of needing to stay away from other people, or having a desire to be near other people. Um, and so just again, we're just paying attention to that. Now, this sounds like this course is going to affect you only in negative ways. But I'd like to say to you that you have a chance to work on some things through the course. So there are self-care activities throughout the course that you might be able to access, that you should access. We have technique demonstrations, and then we have some other optional self-care things. You will be interacting with people who are like-minded. You're going to be learning all kinds of things about your brain that's going to help with thinking and feeling and your physical well-being. And also you'll be able to socialize with other people who have the passion that you have in learning about trauma. So your brain is not just changed in some ways that might be problematic. There's a chance here to have experiences that will inform you and help you as you work toward your trauma-informed clinical social work degree. Okay? So I just want to say a word about the video at the end, the assignment at the end of the course. You will be doing something similar to what I'm explaining here, except that you won't be talking about uh, trauma treatment. You won't talk about what people could do about it. You're just trying to explain to people how they might feel. So I wanted to ask you, Beth, if how that went for you, if there's anything you think I might have done differently, if there's anything that you think I could have added, anything I might have said that could have made you feel uncomfortable.
Actually, I think it was helpful to know that we have something in common out here, that people respond in a certain way, and that I wouldn't be crazy if I had body responses or emotional responses or even intellectual responses. Um, I know that sometimes we make up whole stories about something to try to make it make sense to us when we have feelings about something. And if something or someone reminds us of somebody, that we can build stories in our heads. So it's important to know that this is where that comes from, and to be hopeful that something can be done about it.
That's great. Yeah. There might be a couple of, maybe we could talk for a minute about the way that I talked about it. Because sometimes people will pay attention to what they want to say without thinking about the way that they might say it. So when you talked about, it's good to know this, that I could feel this way. That's really, I think, important. That's our intention when we try to educate or inform somebody about the impact of trauma or the effects of trauma. We don't know what any one person might feel. People might have things in common, but not everybody feels the same way.
So on one hand, I appreciated that you always looked at me when you were talking. I really got the message that you were talking to me, and I thought it was clear, and I think you were warm about it, and I appreciated that. I think if I were working with a person directly, that I might pause between concepts and check in with, oh, have you felt any of those types of reactions? Or do you have any questions here? Then we move on to the next. Just because sometimes it makes a lot of sense for us, but they need to slow it down and process me.
Absolutely. So let's differentiate for a moment the assignment from what we would actually do in practice. So what you're talking about is what we would actually do in practice. We would never go as fast as I did in talking about this. And we would process each area to find out exactly what somebody might have experienced or what they might be worried about. For the assignment, we are observing each student making this explanation without having any interaction with the person that they're talking to, because we just want to hear about how the student, we want to be able to evaluate or assess how well the student can explain the trauma that they're talking about to the person. But that's
So it's
not real life.
It's
Say
not
that
role
again?
play. It's not role play where both
That's
people
right.
are playing a role. It's where the person who's just invisible listening, it's not, it's not dialogue.
That's right.
It's the assignment. So we're not asking people to role play an interaction with a client per se.
That's right.
It's a monologue.
That's right. A monologue. You are a silent partner. But in real life, like as therapists, I mean, we've both been in therapeutic situations where we've worked with people and helped them. We go very slow when we talk to people. We get to know people. We want to build some trust with them. We want to give them power and control in the situation. And I'd say I've heard a couple of people in the past who might say things that I think could be problematic. So I just want to throw out a couple, and maybe you have a couple too. One thing that I've heard folks say sometimes is, you might experience this and that is normal. And there's nothing about this experience that's normal. This is an out of the usual trauma, is out of our range of what we might expect to experience in our life. So it's not normal. And we know people actually that say normal is a setting on the dryer or the washer.
Yeah, and I think when people say that, what they're meaning is that this is in the array of responses that we can expect.
Exactly.
But we don't want to accidentally normalize it as if it's nothing to be concerned about. So
That's
we
right.
want to say, absolutely, this is something that comes from the kind of trauma that you've been through, and we don't want that to continue to be part of your normal life.
Secondly, I think that we never want to promise somebody that they're going to feel better, because we don't know that. And for some people, we can work with them for a short period of time and they can feel better and they'll tell us that they feel better, and that's great. And other people might need a long time to work on all the layers of the impact of the trauma that they've experienced. So we can't really tell a person that we're going to make them feel better or that they will feel better. We don't really know that. So we want to be really cautious about that, right? Yeah. Can you think of any? Go ahead.
We have our own desire to be able to make promises because then we feel that's what we are in the field for. But we have to remember that it's really that person and that person's body and brain that determines where this goes. We can do the best we can as holding the interactions and being supportive and using all kinds of licks that we'll be talking about during the course to help facilitate things, but the end result really isn't up to us.
I tried to be careful about the language that I used, because if I did talk about things, and I think at one point I used a word that then I regretted because it seemed like it was more of a clinical, technical word. And if when I talk to people about how they might be affected, I want to make sure that the language that I use is understandable to them. And that what can happen to people So we could be highly articulate, extremely intelligent human beings talking to other people who are also highly articulate and extremely intelligent. But when you have a lens of trauma, understanding that language can be almost impossible for some people. So if we want to use some technical language, I generally am a fan of doing that sometimes, but I immediately translate it into something that's more understandable and relatable to the person. And especially if I'm talking to a child or an adolescent versus talking to an adult. But I can't assume that an adult is going to understand, because when people are traumatized, they have difficulty taking in information.
And don't you find that it's like sometimes a difficult balance between keeping it clear, relatively slowed down so people can process, and not coming across like you're talking down to the person? So that's something to be constantly aware in terms of our body language, our voice tones, the way we look at our expression, whether it's treating them like a child, no matter who they are. Something we should be conscious of.
I think that you're making also a really good point about how settled we are in our own bodies when we go to talk to somebody. That I need to be relaxed, and so that my voice tone and my body language and all of that conveys the fact that I'm looking at you, I'm here for you. You are like, you're the center of the universe for me while I'm talking to you. And I'm not communicating my own anxiety or worry or irritability to you in the process of talking to you.
I think that's really, really important. And that our stance, even though we don't say we're going to make you better, our stance of warmth and connection gives a person hope.
Yes. We can't really minimize the importance of being with somebody, sitting with them, listening to them, even being quiet with them. But that takes some practice on our part to feel comfortable in doing those things. Do you have anything else you want to add?
Just that we look forward to those final videos.
Yeah, we do. We
We'll
watch every single one of them from start to finish.
And applaud people's interest in delving more deeply into all kinds of trauma and thinking about how we can be aware and help people and hopefully change our world around us.
Thank you so much for doing this with me. And I'm really looking forward to working with all of the students in 664. I'll see you a lot in the course. And thank you so much.